So how much does fire management affect the flavor of barbecue? Well, we've been debating about this back and forth in groups and friends and a lot of people that barbecue. And one person says dirty smoke and one person says clean smoke and one person says charcoal and one says wood only. Well, the honest answer is they all create different profiles and flavors for barbecue, which I think is really neat because it means no two people will cook the same even if they're using the same methods, because it just won't happen that way. But today what we want to walk through is how we set up our offset smoker to cook on hickory and how different types of smoke produce different types of flavor. If you've never been here to Heinz Barbecue before, today we're talking about how smoke affects the flavor of barbecue. And this has been a thing that's been debated forever. And if it's your first time coming here, thanks for checking out the channel. We really appreciate it. Like and subscribe so you can get notified when we put out new videos, upload shorts, different things. So, does it really matter? Well, in my time cooking barbecue for myself, for my family, and now we cook it semi-professionally, I guess you would say. We have a catering business that we use. And I've used a lot of different woods, a lot of different methods, charcoal, pellet smokers, tubes, a lot of different things out there. And the neat thing is that each one of these produces its own unique flavor. But the one thing that I've noticed that's consistent across the board is the way you burn the wood will produce a certain flavor on the barbecue. Whether you want that to be a heavier smoke, a lighter smoke, more of an acidic taste, or more of a clean taste. How you burn the wood in the smoker has the biggest determination of how that flavor profile is going to turn out. And today I want to show you a couple of different methods of the way we build our fire and the way we let it burn to produce different types of flavor throughout the cook. So going over tools and equipment. This is our smoker. This is an offset style smoker, and the majority of what we'll be talking about today will apply to the offset smoker. This is a Char Griller XD series. It's a good little backyard smoker. There's a lot of different ones out there that you could purchase. Old Country is another one that does really well at this price point, and it's actually a little cheaper than this one. I got this one at 450 bucks from Home Depot, and it was on sale because the firebox was damaged and I knew I could fix it. So that's the only reason I got this. I think this thing retails for about 500 or 600 bucks. So good pair of gloves. As always, you'll need these just for opening up the firebox, poking stuff around, and trying not to get a bunch of splinters in your hands. So, consumables. We are using hickory wood. This is what I primarily use. This is all I cook with. You can use different types of wood. It doesn't have to be hickory. I just like the flavor of hickory. Size-wise, there's about 6 to 7 inches long, and they're about 1.5 inches across. So, I do like to let this wood season. It needs to be seasoned for about 8 months to start with. That's about where our stuff is at, and that's considered green to a lot of people, but I like the type of flavor that this produces. And last but not least, our ignition source, or the way we start our fires. Now I know this looks completely ridiculous, and they make a much smaller version of this. I keep this one primarily for the 325 gallon that we use for catering cooks because it can get the firebox rolling and it can heat the smoker up. It's about 39 degrees outside right now, and we do a lot of cooks through the winter. So we're starting that thing up at 19 or 22 degrees. This thing has got a lot of BTUs, about 49,000, so it can really get the smoker warmed up quicker. They make a much smaller version of this, I think called a King Torch, that you can just use with a little butane bottle. And that's typically what I use, but the one I have is broken. So we'll be using this giant 20-pound cylinder today. But you can pick these guys up. All of this is a weed burner. Lowe's, Home Depot, everywhere sells them, but this is what we'll be using to start the fire today and to get everything going. All right, so we're down here at the edge of our firebox. Throw gloves on. Another reason why I like wearing gloves so I don't get crap all over my hands. I don't have to go wash them all the time. The inside of our firebox has got this little grate in here. And what this does, our fire gets built on top of this. It allows airflow to get underneath the wood. If you don't have this in here and you're running directly on metal or just fire bricks, it may be a little harder to get your fire to stay lit. So having that air pocket in there is kind of critical if you're first time using an offset and don't really know how all that stuff works. That's a big improvement. So if you can get one of those racks or a way to get a little air under that fire, it'll make fire management a lot easier. So the next thing we're going to do is just build our fire. And I like the log cabin style, which is pretty much where you take two pieces and lay them down like this. We'll take two more pieces and lay on top of that. And then we'll do the same thing just like that. And we built a little log cabin inside of our firebox. It allows the fire to get under here and really set all the wood on fire to help build our coal bed a lot faster. So let's get this thing set up. And to start with, we're just going to do 4 logs because this box is a little smaller. So I don't want to overheat this too much, mainly because it messes up the gasket seals on my smoker. But 4 pieces right now should be plenty. Next thing we've got to do is get this thing lit up. And the way I like to do this is we'll turn our gas on. You can get this from any kind of metalworking store, but Lowe's and Home Depot sells this in the welding section. All this is a striker. What it allows me to do is come down here and turn the propane on. And then we can just light it that way, which is pretty nice. With the type of BTUs this puts out, it'll have this thing lit and nothing flat. So letting this burn in this kind of configuration where I've just got the torch laying down and it's pointing in at the bottom of the fire, this will take probably about 5 to 10 minutes to get everything caught. One big thing you want to make sure that you've done is open up the stack on the other end so the fire can start to breathe. It can take the heat and start to eject it outside of the stack. If you don't have that completely open, you may have a really hard time of getting your fire started. So another key thing to understand about wood is wood size. And this does matter when you're getting your fire started. When you're using something like this to start your fire, it's not as big of an issue. These are 2 completely different sizes of wood. And when I'm building a fire to start with, I'm going to use more of these smaller splits because they're going to turn into coals a lot faster and help down the burn down process. The biggest thing that you really need to do when building a fire to make sure that it runs smoothly is to build a strong coal bed, which means you've burned down a lot of logs into a big pile of coals. That's going to do 2 things. It's going to keep the heat actually contained inside of there, so when you put a new split on, it's going to help ignite it a lot faster. And the second thing it's going to do is it's going to help to turn everything into coals a lot faster. So you're not spending so much time trying to get wood to catch, I guess is a better way of putting that. It's not about turning it into coals, it's about also getting the piece of wood to catch that you put inside the fire, so you're not sitting over there wanting to throw the smoker in the woods, which I wanted to do a couple of times. But now that we've got these 2 pieces right here and we're looking at the type of wood that we're using, another big thing that you can do is you can take these pieces of wood and lay them on top of your wood box, on top of your firebox, and let them preheat. What that's going to do is it's just going to get the wood hotter, so when you put it in there, it's not trying to take it from 15 or 20 or 30 degrees up to combustible temperature. It's going to happen a lot faster, and it makes a big difference when you're building a fire. So depending on the type of smoker you have, you may have a side door and an open door. It's kind of nice if you have this because you can look in there and kind of see what the fire looks like. So after about 5 minutes, this is what we look like as far as a fire. The one thing I want to point out the most, we have no coal bed yet. Everything inside of there is just burning wood. We'll move a little closer here so you can see that there's no coals built up below anything in there. It's just wood that's just burning. We want to let this wood burn all the way down until we get a thick layer of coals under here. So this is going to take a little bit longer, and I'll show you how to build a coal bed. All right, so now that we've got pretty much a basic fire built, what we're going to do is we're going to take some of these smaller pieces and we're just going to lay those on top of this and let this guy continue to burn down. Probably a great time for you to wear your gloves, but I'm not really that worried about it. At this point, we want to give the fire as much oxygen as we can, just to make sure that everything catches inside of here. If you want to speed this process up, you can turn the torch back on and keep doing this, probably for about 30 minutes until you get a good coal bed. So as we're getting the smoker up and running, we're bringing it up to temperature, we've burning our first set of logs down into coals. This is the first profile of flavor. Some people put their food on at this point because it gives it a very distinct flavor. What that flavor is, in my opinion, is a heavier, more acidic smoke, depending on the type of fire that you're building, but it does seem to come off as a lot heavier smoke flavor. I've tested this out a few times, and I do like it under certain circumstances, depending on if you don't have a really long cook and you really want to pack a lot of smoke flavor in there, especially with hickory, because it's a heavier flavored wood, in my opinion. You can put stuff on early when you're starting this up, and it trims your cook times down. It could trim it down by as much as an hour to 2 hours. So this is our first flavor of smoke, and you can see typically when you're starting this up, it's going to be a lot heavier smoke. You'll have a lot of the white, dense smoke. This fire is burning pretty good because we've got a stack extension on here that helps it draw really well. But this is your first flavor of smoke. Typically when you're first firing up the fire, it's going to give it some unique characters, but it'll have more of a heavier, almost kind of a acidic or dirtier taste to it than if you were to already have the fire going and then place your food on it. All right, so we're about 15-20 minutes into letting everything burn down. And as you can see, the stack behind me is crystal clear. There's no smoke coming out of it. That's because we're starting to get our temperature up to where we need to build this coal bed. So this brings me to my next problem with putting meat on as you're getting your fire going or as you're building your coal bed. Some smokers can do this. Our big smoker, Zeus, I can do this no problem because I can set everything down at the farther end of the smoker, and even if I do have it closer to the firebox, it's not that big of an issue. But right now we're running, on the far end, we're running 355 degrees. So that's a problem. If you've already got your food on here and this smoker's completely full, by the time you build your coal bed, you could have already burnt something down here. So just something to keep in mind. If you got a smaller smoker, it may not be feasible to put your food in to get that type of flavor, but I'll show you how to get that flavor if you're looking for that type of flavor a little bit later after we get the coal bed set up. And another small trick that I like to do, some people like to take their wood and set it directly on top of the firebox. You can do that, and I did say that you can do that earlier. When you're first getting your fire going and you've only got a couple of splits in there, it's not a bad idea. But once this firebox gets hot and you put this wood on top of there, you can start a fire on top of your firebox. Depending on where you're cooking it, it may not be a problem. Something I like to do is lay it on top of the smoker because we're above the firebox on this end. So it's a good place to put your wood just to heat it up, but it won't catch on fire. All right, so our temperature is starting to dip. So that tells me that we've burnt some of this down into coals and we need to get some more wood put inside the firebox. So let's have a look inside our firebox here. And yes, we have burned a lot of what we got into coals. And you can see that these are now just little pieces of wood that are pretty much superheated, hot enough to catch this stuff on fire. So we're just gonna build another log cabin out of some smaller splits again, directly on top of this again. And we're gonna repeat this process one more time before we actually would put our food on, if you wanna do it that way. And I'm gonna build a little bit bigger pyramid this time, or not pyramid, log cabin, sorry. Wrong family there. But we've got this rebuilt. We're gonna let this burn down one more time, and then we're gonna start talking about the other different flavors of smoke. All right, so we've hit our 30-minute point of burning our wood down into coals. And one of the things that I forgot in our tools list is a pair of stainless steel long-handled tongs. And these things are probably a little over a foot long, and this is a critical tool for fire management. I know it sounds kind of idiotic, but I use these things more than probably I use anything. The shovel, for bigger smokers, you'll typically use a shovel a lot, but these for a small backdoor smoker, you can pick these up at a restaurant supply store, or just steal some from inside and hope you don't get in too much trouble. Let's take a look at what we got in here. So we have completely burnt down to coals again, and we've got a pretty decent little coal bed down in the bottom there underneath that grate. So now would be the time is when I would load my food on. We've burnt the coal bed down. We've got a pretty good heat source to ignite our next set of logs. So this is where your first set of flavor profiles are going to come in at. If you're using a bigger, heavier log like this one, this is probably almost 2 inches across, same length because I cut all these the same. This is going to give you a lot more smoke out of the gate. And that's what you're really looking for if you're wanting that super smoky flavor. So we're going to put on a bigger log on the bottom of the base, and it's going to cause this to smolder a little bit, and that's going to produce a lot more smoke in general. So this is going to be our first base log that we put down. Second, we're going to put down something about half that size. And then third, we're just going to cross just another little piece up on the top. So now we've got our little system kind of built inside of here, and this will start to produce the type of smoke that we want. We're also going to leave our firebox cracked, and that's a big part of kind of fire management. How much you leave this door cracked and how much you mess with this damper down here is also going to produce a different flavor of smoke. Above 550, 600 degrees, from what I've seen with my cooker, we're starting to produce flavors that kind of range in between vanilla, and you get some really unique notes and flavors. Below that, where you start to see the smoke is like a whitish bluish color, which is what we've got coming out right now out of the smoker. If we move the camera here so we can see the stack. So this type of smoke is what I'm really looking for. To me, it's the best of both worlds. It's not too acidic and it's not too overpowering, but it does put a lot of flavor on the food. And what we've done is we just put that big base log down, kind of another log about half that size, and then a smaller one on top of it, just to continue burning down into more coals. But this is the type of smoke that I think produces some of the best barbecue out there. So now that we've got our fire going, everything's kind of stabilized down on the other end. We're going to move up to the stack end. Right now we've got the stack completely open. And what that's doing is it's just letting everything heat back up and just burn the wood as fast as it can for the amount of oxygen that we let in. In order to start producing a smoke flavor, you need to start shutting this damper down and controlling the amount of air that's coming through the smoker, so that it gives the smoke time to stick to the actual meat itself. With this smoker, typically I'm going to cut this down about 3/4 of the way. In a moment, you'll start to see the smoke color really start to change into a much whiter color. And I don't want to go completely white because that may be a more acidic smoke. It's going to give it kind of an off flavor to some people. Some people really like that, and what they do is they put in layers of flavor. So they'll start off with that really white, kind of acidic, heavy smoke, and then they'll layer that. They won't let it run very long, and I know some people that do that, and they make phenomenal barbecue that way. But what I like to do is I like to thicken up the smoke just enough that I'm not overpowering it, and I can just leave this set this way and run my entire cook like this. So we'll give this a moment, fast forward through some stuff, and let you see kind of how the smoke color changes. All right, so you've got to see kind of the different levels of smoke by color, and that's pretty much how I judge what type of flavor I'm putting on the meat based off of smoke color. We're starting to enter kind of the last phase, which is what most people would consider the dirty smoke phase, and it's not 100% there. This is kind of in between. This is running kind of right on the edge of where I like to be at. This is going to produce the most flavor without giving it that acidic taste or that kind of dirty smoke flavor that you hear some people talk about. I think this adds tremendous flavor to the barbecue, and honestly, this is about the way I run the majority of the stuff that we cook. That being said, there's two critical components to this that you really need to understand. Is inside of our smoker, we control the humidity very closely. And I found that controlling the amount of humidity that's in the smoker has the greatest potential to produce the flavor that you're looking for. Humidity inside of a smoker is what will magnify the flavor, regardless of what you're doing with the wood. So if you're running a really clean fire and you're wanting those notes of vanilla and really mild smoke, high humidity is going to help that flavor come through. The same goes for if you're running a much dirtier fire and you're producing a much heavier smoke that's a little bit more acidic and has very different notes to it, humidity is going to increase that tenfold. And I found that to be consistent over and over and over. So if you're wanting to get more flavor on your barbecue, the number one thing you need to do is increase the humidity inside the smoker. A trick that we do is we'll take a big pan, the more surface area you have, and just put a small layer of water in it, so higher evaporation rates, you'll be able to capture more of that flavor in there. The bad thing is that pan takes up more real estate. Second thing you can do is put a smaller pan in there and put less water in it so it gets to its boiling point faster, so it can evaporate more and raise the humidity inside the smoker. So that's one trick that will help out tremendously on the amount of flavor that you get regardless of how you cook, is controlling your humidity. The second thing is how much you're controlling this damper. So if we shut this damper down a little more, it's going to cause that smoke inside of there to slow the burning process down in the firebox. And when that happens, you'll start to see the smoke get whiter and whiter because it's actually putting that fire out and it's making it smolder. And that gives it a very unique flavor. Some people like it and some people don't. But there's only three major characteristics of smoke that I've found cooking, and that is very clean smoke that gives you a super clean, very light smoke. You get kind of notes of vanilla and just a really light smoke. The second smoke is kind of in between. It's where you're starting to see that light blue smoke. There's not a lot of white color in the smoke. That gives you more caramel flavors, and it really starts to let you taste the type of wood that you're cooking with, whether it's a hickory or a white oak or a red oak. You'll start to really feel some of those notes come through if you cook at that. The third one is a much dirtier smoke, kind of what we're producing right now. It's got a lot more whiter color in it, and what's going to end up happening is you'll have a little bit more of an acidic taste to it. But I think you also get some notes of the wood that you don't get from the other two because it burns a lot of those compounds off. So to me, those are the three major wood profiles that you're going to have throughout a cook. If you layer these, and if you run a fire kind of properly, you'll automatically do this. So when you put new wood on the fire, it'll turn white and it'll get a little smoky. Some people say, make sure you leave the firebox door open or whatever and let that wood catch. I think it's kind of neat if you don't do that, and it goes through that process automatically of starting the fire back up, bringing in that kind of white, heavier smoke, and it adds a very unique profile to it. And it'll only last for a few minutes. Then it moves into the middle range where it starts to produce that kind of clean, wispy blue smoke. And then it goes to a very clean smoke once the temperature starts to rise really high, if you're just kind of letting the fire do its thing and you're not really managing it much. So you'll get all three of those different flavor profiles. You add a good high humidity to that, and you'll get some fantastic barbecue. But if you just want to stick with one of these are the different ways or flavor profiles, I guess you could say, that we found cooking with any type of wood. So you've got a very clean smoke that is typically at the end of the fire's process when it's really starting to heat up above 550 to 670 degrees. Then we drop down a little bit before that where we're supposed to start to produce a mild smoke, which is in that range of like 400 to 550 degrees. And then we drop down below that to 350 to 400 degrees, which is kind of like a dirty acidic smoke. Each one of those have their own flavor profiles with the type of wood that you're burning. So keep that in mind, and that to me are the major profiles of smoke, and how to use them is kind of up to you. You get to play around with this with as much as you want to. But the characteristics that I've seen, the bluer the whiter the smoke is, the heavier taste of smoke you're going to have. Now, whether you want that more acidic or more vanilla, kind of lighter, that's where you get to play with this to find out what your flavor profile is and how that may want to show up in your barbecue. So, all right, so there it is. The three flavor profiles of barbecue that I think you can get with wood. So after going over all of this, I hope this helps someone out there kind of in your journey of cooking. I know this is something that I've just kind of recently discovered and hope to learn more things and share those with people out there in the barbecue world. So until next time, I hope you get to keep them burning and Happy holidays to you and your family.